Welcome back to the Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Well, the Tea Party is really riled up. We haven't seen them like this since 2010. I've got Hans Von Spakovsky on the program. He's been on the show before. He's a great guest. He's from the Heritage Foundation. And you know what? They have more reason to be riled up, maybe than they even did back in 2010. Welcome to the program, Hans.
Well, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, you bet. You do a great job. That's why we keep asking you to come back. So tell us a little bit, first of all, about what's going on. What's on the Tea Party's radar screen, if you will?
Well, what's on their screen is the fact that they weren't just being paranoid. They were being targeted by the government, particularly the IRS, and that's why they held a big rally on the west lawn of the Capitol to protest the IRS going after them.
Yeah, and that's interesting that they're doing it there rather than the White House.
Yeah, that's because I don't think they really, and they're right about this, trust the president on this. They want Congress to do oversight and find out exactly what happened, and that's the right place for them to be protesting about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. That makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be anyone there with the intestinal fortitude to really hold them accountable. Darrell Issa, in my opinion, has gone from someone that I was really excited about when the Obama administration began, because he's a great minority person on that committee, but he doesn't have Waxman's capacity to be tough, in my opinion. And he drags things on so long that by the time he does get around to taking serious action, which I'm not sure this statement is true, because there's very few things where he has taken very serious action, he looks purely political. I think Fast and Furious is a great example of that. We should have began hearings, Watergate-style hearings, on Fast and Furious. And so he just drags his feet too long. Waxman, there's no way Henry Waxman would have waited.
Well, that may be, but I do have to compliment them on the fact that, look, they are right now in the midst of, and they have been for the past month, of taking depositions of IRS employees. And I can tell you there's going to be stuff coming out. We already had some of it come out just in the past couple of days. Holly Paz, one of the IRS folks who was in charge of doing this and who apparently was fired by the IRS recently, saying that and making clear that this wasn't just some rogue employees out in Ohio, but that the Washington office was definitely involved in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The thing about it, everyone I have talked to about this who has knowledge, who have worked in, the Treasury and various other departments, there's no way this could have been done on an isolated basis.
No, that is true. The IRS is a very centralized federal agency, and it's a top-down organization, and the claims that the administration came out at first that it was just a couple of employees out in Ohio doing it on their own. I mean, that just didn't make sense, and factually we're now finding out that was, frankly, a lie.
Okay. So what do you see happening next? Kind of give me an overview of what your thoughts are.
Well, look, we have one big problem here, or the Tea Party organizations have a big problem here, in that, look, the administration has said, well, this is no longer happening, we're stopping it, but we know that there are dozens of Tea Party organizations that still have not gotten their letters from the IRS saying, yes, you qualify as a tax-exempt organization. So if they've supposedly fixed it, how come they haven't actually resolved the problem? And that is still a big issue for the Tea Party organizations.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And, and you got to wonder how this is going to change and how this is going to pan out. Of the various scandals that are out there, and this may be a little stretch from what you normally cover, but of the various scandals that are out there, which one do you see having the most traction?
Well, this one right now, I think, does have the most traction, and it may, because while the average American, for example, may not pay attention always to things like, foreign policy issues, what happened in Benghazi, everybody has to deal with the IRS. And everybody is scared of the IRS because they know how much power that federal agency has to basically ruin your life. And this is something that I think people are going to be thinking about when they go into the voting booth next year when we have some very important midterm congressional elections.
Yeah. Let me ask you, as we go into those, it seemed like just 3 or 4 months ago, particularly by the more moderate positions that Obama was taking. Let's face it, a lot of us thought he was going to go nuts as a lame duck, but he acted kind of, trying to figure out that moderate position to take. It seemed like to me that he was clearly trying to posture himself to be able to have some serious victories in both houses of Congress in the next election cycle, and then he could go gonzo, if you know what I mean. That seems to be in jeopardy for the president.
Oh, no, it definitely is. And look, we just had reports that, in fact, he has been intimately involved in what's been happening in the Senate with regard to that outrageous immigration bill that's being pushed through. And, in fact, they're trying to pull it through the same way they pushed through Obamacare in the middle of the night. And they're doing that with this immigration bill. And that immigration bill is not anywhere close to anything that you could call moderate.
Yeah, I understand that, and that's exactly right. And I think he's getting, kind of disregarding that strategy. I mean, I think a lot of people expected after November that he would immediately have gone, nuts. And he's gotten his biggest criticism from the left until they saw what was happening with these various scandals, and now it appears they're circling the wagons. It's really quite crazy what's going on. And don't get me wrong, this guy's a nut even in his most moderate positions. He's still way beyond the norm. There's a lot of rumor that the Attorney General, Eric Holder, the administration wants him out. I'm seeing stories to that. Yet, my understanding is when I used to work in Washington, D.C., and I had friends who worked in the White House, including a few in higher level positions, they submitted letters of resignation before they even began their job, and the president pulled those out as needed. Has that changed?
I think that certainly is not the case with the Attorney General, and I don't think he's going to be leaving anytime soon, and I don't think they want him out. Because, look, he's sitting on a lot of things. I mean, just one example. There are thousands and thousands of documents that the Justice Department has refused to hand over in the investigation of Operation Fast and Furious. And if Holder left, the president would have to nominate somebody new, and in the confirmation hearings over that, all of that would come to the fore. In fact, the Republicans, I'm sure, would say, look, we're not going to confirm anybody unless you promise to turn over all these documents in Operation Fast and Furious and all these other cases where they have refused to turn things over. I don't think the White House wants that. This Attorney General acts as kind of a heat shield to keep heat off the president.
All right. Our guest today, again, he's been on the program before. I always enjoy having him on. He does a fine job. He's from one of the country's premier think tanks, the Heritage Foundation, Hans Von Spakovsky. And what exactly do you do for Heritage?
I'm one of the lawyers in their legal center, and I do their legal analysis on everything that comes out of the Supreme Court and Congress and elsewhere that has to do with the law.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Do want to encourage you to check them out, heritage.org. They do an awesome job. I'm Kevin Price. You're listening to The Price of Business. The best contact here shows up over there at usdailyreview.com. While there, like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter.